Tonight, back in Parliament to face MPs. Boris Johnson, the first Prime Minister in history to be fined for breaking the law, is met by calls for him to resign.
That was my mistake, and I apologise for it unreservedly.
What a joke. The public have made up their mind. They know what he is.
The Prime Minister now faces a vote on whether he should face a Commons investigation. Also making the headlines, accident and emergency waiting times match their worst on record. A third of patients are waiting more than 4 hours. In sport, Scottish clubs vote in favour of introducing VAR to the Scottish Premiership next season.
And meet the mini-me in training to become the next STV news anchor.
I am Max Monner, and this is STV News at 6.
I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. Boris Johnson has faced MPs for the first time since he became the first sitting Prime Minister in history to be fined for breaking the law. He offered an unreserved apology, then caveated it, saying he didn't think at the time a gathering on his birthday was a breach of COVID rules.
Later this week, MPs will vote on whether there should be a Commons investigation into claims Boris Johnson knowingly misled Parliament. As opposition parties say, the Prime Minister must go. Our Westminster correspondent Catherine Sampson reports.
Letters from the Prime Minister dropped on doormats across Scotland at the start of the first lockdown. Boris Johnson, who urged people to follow the rules he wrote, has been posted a fine for breaking them.
How many more fines are on the way, Mr Johnson?
Plenty of questions this morning for a Prime Minister who has already said sorry for a birthday event held in his honour inside Downing Street.
Can lawmakers be lawbreakers?
His supporters have tried to play down the penalty he received for it.
We've seen ministers from the previous Labour government as well getting fines for speeding offences and traffic offences, things like that. The key thing is that when that happens, that somebody has to accept that that has happened, as the Prime Minister has done. He's acknowledged that, he's paid the fine, he's apologised for that.
But the Prime Minister told MPs no parties took place.
Did you like the Parliament, Prime Minister?
This afternoon he faced them for the first time since that fine.
I now call the Prime Minister.
I take this opportunity on the first available sitting day to repeat my wholehearted apology to the House. It did not occur to me then or subsequently that a gathering in the Cabinet room just before a vital meeting on COVID strategy could amount to a breach of the rules. I repeat, that was my mistake, and I apologise for it unreservedly. I respect the outcome of the police investigation, which is still underway, and I can only say that I will respect their decision-making and always take the appropriate steps.
What a joke. Even now, as the latest mealy-mouthed apology stumbles out of one side of his mouth, a new set of deflections and distortions pour from the other. But the damage is already done. The Chancellor's career up in flames, and the leader of the Scottish Conservatives rendered pathetic.
A majority of people across these islands will never trust a single word he says again. So the questions today are not so much for a Prime Minister desperately clinging on to power. The real question is for Tory backbenchers. Will they finally grow a spine and remove this person from office?
Opposition MPs are exploring ways to try and inflict more political pain on the Prime Minister, but it's his own party colleagues who really hold the key to his future. Well, in a few hours' time here, the Prime Minister is due to address a group of Tory MPs to try and rally the troops. That could be made a bit harder for him, given that in the last half hour, a former Tory Chief Whip, Mark Harper, actually took to his feet in the Commons and called on the Prime Minister to quit, saying he wasn't worthy of his office. Now, Labour are continuing to try and trigger a Commons investigation into whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament. There'll be a vote on Thursday, but given the Conservative majority here, it's unlikely that will get through. In the meantime, of course, another leader had issues with COVID rule breaking over the weekend. That was Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister. She was pictured at a barber shop without a mask. She said she put it on seconds later, and Police Scotland chose to issue just a warning. There was no further punishment there. Nevertheless, that has been something that Conservatives have chosen to seize on as they continue to have this bitter row over the Prime Minister's future.
Catherine at Westminster, thank you.
Well, the majority of COVID restrictions are now gone, but there is no sign of improvements to A&E waiting times. In fact, they've matched their worst on record. Just 66.2% of patients were seen within the Scottish Government's 4-hour target.
The number of patients spending more than 8 hours in an A&E department stood at 2,373, and a total of 944 patients spent more than 12 hours. The worst affected health board was NHS Forth Valley. In a moment, we'll hear more on that from Vanessa Taff. But first, she has this report.
Jacqueline has stage 4 cancer. After suffering with breathing problems, she was rushed to A&E. She waited over 24 hours for a bed in a ward.
So I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even get a word out properly.
The length of time having to wait, and like so she couldn't get a meal or anything because she was in A&E. Because you got to wait until you get into a ward to see a doctor and stuff. But the 24 hours is just ridiculous.
Just over 66% of patients at A&E were dealt with within the government's 4-hour target. More than 7,700 people waited longer than that, while 944 patients were in hospital for over 12 hours.
We've had record levels of hospital occupancy with COVID. We've had high levels of staff absence. And so there's no doubt that unfortunately people have had to wait longer. And of course, I regret when anybody has to wait longer than is acceptable. I would expect, now that we've seen some of these numbers come down in terms of COVID hospital occupancy, my expectation would be that there will be an improvement in these figures.
We know it costs lives. People die unnecessarily because of these delays. It's an example, again, of Humza Yousaf not knowing what he's doing when it comes to accident and emergency and medicine and the NHS in general.
In an effort to tackle the increasing backlogs, the government are recruiting 1,500 additional staff.
The Scottish Government talk about numbers all the time, but it's not about numbers. Numbers misses the point. It's about whether we have, not if we have more staff, but enough staff to meet the needs of the people of Scotland. And clearly we don't currently. At the moment in Scotland, there's over 6,700 nursing vacancies.
So today we are going to look at surgical gowning and gloving.
At this training session, these already qualified nurses are learning new skills to plug the gaps in surgical wards.
They are up and running within the orthopaedic setting. We've got them in 6 months to be scrubbing up independently for hips and knee joints. So that's a massive task, and it's a lot of work is required for it.
We've been taking on surgeries from other hospitals that we previously hadn't been doing. So as nurses, it's been good to get a chance to expand our skills and see these surgeries.
We don't really do this at university, they mention theatres, but it's so specialised, it's something you need to work in.
Senior health professionals have said the NHS has never faced a crisis worse than this.
So Vanessa, the Scottish Government has said these figures need to be set against the context of a global pandemic, but of course that's now receding.
Yes, well, the vast majority of restrictions were lifted just yesterday, with masks now optional in most public places. But let's just be clear, these A&E figures aren't just a problem because of COVID. They're close to almost pre-pandemic. levels again. Now, this 95% target that the Scottish Government set themselves of seeing patients within 4 hours has dropped to 80%, and it's been at that rate for quite some time. Now, almost 23,000 Scots visited A&Es up and down the country, but NHS Forth Valley recorded the lowest number of patients seen. They saw just 54%. But for some context, there's only one A&E. It's the Forth Valley Royal here behind me for this health board. And really, these figures are only just a glimpse into what those working in A&E departments and the health service are facing. Experts are warning that they're far from out of the woods yet, and this is an exhausted workforce.
Vanessa in Forth Valley, thank you. The bosses of some of the largest energy firms have warned of a horrific winter ahead for some energy customers. They say more will fall into fuel poverty if the UK government doesn't act.
Energy prices have soared in the past year, with the energy price cap increasing by more than 50%, and it's likely to go up again in October. Stephen Brown has more.
From this month, for millions more households, energy has got a lot more expensive as the price cap went up. But the warning is things are likely to get worse.
My biggest concern is actually when we get to October, particularly around the most vulnerable and the poorest, and that tends to match with the people on a prepayment meter. Come October, that's going to get horrific, truly horrific. And it's got to a stage now where I honestly believe the size and scale of this is beyond what I can deal with. It's beyond what I think this industry can deal with.
The bosses of 4 energy firms were in front of a Westminster committee today. Most warned that more customers will fall into fuel poverty unless the government does more. Around 30 energy firms have gone bust in the past year as rising wholesale gas prices took their toll on the market, even before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But also there has been criticism of how some fallen firms were run and who picks up the bill.
The Insolvency Service should pursue the managers, the directors, the executives of every failed company. Those that have misbehaved should feel the full force of the law.
Bulb Energy is one business to fall victim to rising costs and has so far only survived in special administration funded by the UK government and therefore taxpayers. The founder, though, remains in the business on a £250,000 a year salary.
Mr Wood, when did you realise you were out of your depth?
We realised in the autumn of last year that it was a very, very challenging time for the company, and that that's why we needed to change the fundraising process into a sale process, and eventually made the choice to put the company into administration. I am very sorry for the way things turned out.
This charity says they're now recruiting more people as demand for their advice and help continues to increase.
It's people on benefits and also people in full-time secure work who are now looking at, well, they're looking at fuel poverty basically, you know. Big bills being quoted, you know, from energy companies, £300, £400 a month. They're shocked and they're worried, and they haven't, you know, been in that position before.
Summer may help ease energy bills a little for some, but the financial squeeze will continue for many and likely ramp up again in the winter ahead. Stephen Brown, STV News.
Former First Minister Alex Salmond launched his Alba Party's local election manifesto in Dundee today. He set out plans to freeze the council tax, double winter fuel payments and cut household energy costs by a third. 111 Alba candidates will stand for election on May the 5th. The party is hoping for a breakthrough after failing to win any seats at Holyrood last year.
Getting our first ever candidate elected under the Alba banner. Now that would be hugely important for a young political party, just a year old, but it would be important for the future of Scottish politics because it would be like an electric shock through Scottish politics, and what Scotland needs right now is that shock to start the impetus of the independence campaign and get the country moving forward again.
Plenty of sports news tonight, so Rahman has told me to get a move on.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
I tell them that all of the time. Good evening. It's a huge moment and a big change for Scottish football. The words of SPFL Chief Executive Neil Doncaster after clubs voted to introduce VAR in the Scottish Premiership from next season. Its introduction was backed by 41 out of 42 clubs. The system will cost just over £1 million a season. Here's Ronnie Charters.
The latest signing in Scottish football. Video assistant referees voted for by the SPFL clubs this afternoon will now be introduced into the Scottish Premiership halfway through next season.
I think it's a huge moment, a big change to the rules going forward. VAR has been in football for some years. We've not been an early adopter of that technology, and I think that was the right decision to enable the various issues with that technology to be ironed out. I think we're adopting it at the right time, and we can look forward to hopefully more correct decisions going forward and more support for our referees.
The Premiership will use the Hawkeye Innovation System, already in use in many leagues worldwide, including the English Premier League. It'll see a minimum of 6 cameras installed at each ground next season and will only be used in 4 key areas. Those are penalty decisions, whether there's a goal or not, any mistake in identity and any red card offences.
If you make a big decision during the match, it can sometimes play in your mind about whether you've got it right or not, and certainly throughout the course of the game for management of the players, they will have a perception that it's right or wrong. If we can know that it is the correct decision, or indeed change it and get the correct decision, then it's just massive for the credibility of our own performances and the league.
In terms of financing VAR, the total cost is around £1.2 million. The amount each Premiership club will have to pay will relate to where they finish in the league this season. For instance, the champions will pay almost £200,000, with a sliding scale to the 12th club, who'll pay around £67,000. Ronnie Charters, STV News.
In other football news, Rangers' request to bring forward their league match against Motherwell by 24 hours has been granted. The two teams will now meet at Fir Park this Saturday with a 12 o'clock kick-off. The Arbots club asked the SPFL to make the switch in order to give them more time to prepare for the first leg of their Europa League semi-final against RB Leipzig in Germany next week. Hibs have sacked Sean Maloney after just 4 months in charge. It follows their Scottish Cup exit to Hearts. The Easter Road club are now searching for their 5th manager in just over 3 years. Here's Sheila McLaren.
Hibs players leaving their training ground earlier as the club once again begins their search for a new manager. After just 19 games in charge, Sean Maloney was relieved of his duties this morning. Owner Ron Gordon said they'd hoped appointing a young, highly regarded coach would take them forward, before saying ultimately it didn't work out. The former Celtic and Scotland midfielder left his post as Belgium assistant to succeed Jack Ross in December and won his first 2 matches in charge. But since the winter break, Hibs have only won 1 Premiership game, and back-to-back defeats to Hearts ended their top 6 chances and saw them crash out of the Scottish Cup, ending any hopes of playing in Europe next season. Speaking after the defeat at Hampden, Maloney vowed he knew exactly what was needed for his side to be able to compete.
I've known for quite a while where in areas that we need to be better in to give us an opportunity to fight for top 6, top 4 Europe. I've known that from very early on. Worked extremely hard with the players we have, young players, but we all have to make sure that come next summer and come pre-season we are a lot stronger.
That task will now fall to someone else. Hibs say they won't rush into an appointment. Former skipper David Gray will take caretaker charge for the remainder of the campaign. For some supporters though, the problem runs deeper than just the manager.
We never got anyone in the transfer window summertime, a centre forward which we required. Boyle left and we never replaced him. We got money in the bank, don't know how much it was, possibly 2 million, possibly 3, we don't know, and we've never used it. We're the laughing stock of the Football League at the moment. We're getting like Watford. If you don't win, you get rid of.
St Mirren are next up for the Easter Road side on Saturday.
To snooker news, and John Higgins is involved in a tough battle in his opening match at the World Championship. The 4-time champion trails Thailand's Thepchaiye Unnu by 5 frames to 4. The match resumes tomorrow morning. And that, folks, is all of sport tonight.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Out to the weather with Philip.
A cold snap is on the way. TUI Blue Hotels, sponsor STV Weather.
Well, as we head through the rest of this evening and overnight, the winds are starting to ease and change direction to an easterly airflow. So to begin with, we will still be seeing one or two scattered, isolated showers around, but eventually those start to fizzle out, fade away, and for many of us it will be a dry night with some clear skies. Under the clearest conditions, we could see temperatures getting below freezing, could see a touch of frost in rural spots. For most towns and cities, though, sitting around 5 or 6 degrees Celsius. Now, looking ahead to tomorrow, overall it will be a pretty pleasant day. Lots of sunshine and sunny spells on offer through the course of the afternoon. Any mist and fog patches or frost that has formed overnight will burn off through the course of the morning. Later on in the day, we do start to see some cloud bubbling up. Some of that could be thick enough for one or two showers, but in the best of the sunshine, temperatures reaching highs of 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. Now, the trend for the rest of the week will be for temperatures to come down a few degrees, despite the fact that things will be quite sunny and dry. And by Sunday, we'll be seeing highs of around 14 degrees Celsius. Looking ahead to Thursday now, overall a fairly similar day. Thanks to that easterly airflow, there will be more in the way of cloud around. The best chance of any sunnier, brighter conditions will be further west, where we're also seeing the highest temperatures, highs of around 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
TUI Blue Hotels, sponsor STV Weather.
And finally, 11-year-old Max Marner dreams of becoming a TV presenter. And why wouldn't you? A marvellous vocation. He's interviewed famous Scottish faces as well as fronting a documentary for his YouTube channel in his bid to become a star.
Well, sussing out the competition, Laura Boyd invited Max into STV studios for a tour and to put his skills to the test, interviewing our very own Ray of Sunshine.
Can you tell me who you were most starstruck by and who you would never have back on the show?
Asking the difficult questions, Max Marner began interviewing Scottish stars during lockdown, making him more determined than ever to realise his dream of becoming a TV presenter. We invited Max into STV to show him the ropes and to see how he would fare with someone who knows a thing or two about weathering the storm of live TV.
I'm nervous about this, you know.
So, you said you're obsessed with snow and snowy weather. Is it your fault it's always freezing in Scotland?
It's not always freezing, is it?
Sometimes.
Maybe out where you are in Kilmacombe.
Have you ever made a mistake doing the weather?
Fuck no. That's the other channel that do that. They're the ones that make mistakes.
Very sure of yourself there, Mr. Batty. But could Max be about to rain on your parade?
On Friday, it's going to be roasting and a really good day.
Definitely a star in the making, and Max's dad couldn't be prouder.
We've got two kids and we're immensely proud of the two of them, but regarding Max with this, we are really proud of him. It's just the confidence it brings with him.
A young presenter like myself, have you got any hints and tips?
I don't think you need any hints and tips. You're doing a brilliant job, but...
Thanks, Laura.
I'm not even lying, you're great.
You've interviewed many celebrities. Who were you most starstruck by and lost for words?
I think I was most starstruck with Rod Stewart. Do you know who Rod Stewart is?
Sorta.
He's a bit of an old singer. He's a bit of an old man, but he's very good.
I know who he is now.
And what's been the coolest bit about being in STV today?
I'd say this.
Well, I think you should end the show tonight, so can you take it away?
Max Marner, STV News, ready to steal John Mackay's job.
Well, he is really very, very good. Don't you think, John?
He was all right. He was better at the weather, I think. He was better. No, well done, Max. Good luck to you. From all of us here, thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Good night.